The galaxy had changed since humans last fought on the battlefield. Long ago, after centuries of brutal wars, the Galactic Council had banned humans from all conflicts. Their methods were feared, their tactics unpredictable, and their power unmatched. But that power had come with a cost. Peace, fragile and uneasy, had settled among the allied species, and the memory of humanity's fierce reputation faded into whispered stories told in dark corners. Yet now, far on the edge of the known space, war was breaking out again, a war so desperate and so dangerous that the Council's leaders had no choice but to reconsider the past. In a hidden base orbiting a dying star, deep in the cold shadows, a forgotten space, the door to a sealed vault slowly hissed open. Inside lay the human strike team once thought lost to history, silent, waiting and ready. Captain Mira Talon, eyes sharp and heart steady, stepped forward. She was a warrior born of humanity's finest bloodlines, shaped by brutal training and countless battles, and now she was awake again. The team gathered around her, their faces marked by time but unbowed by it. They had been erased from official records, exiled to obscurity, but their skills had not faded. As they prepared to deploy, a wave of tension rippled through the galactic forces who watched from afar, some hoping for salvation, others dreading the return of a storm they had tried to forget. Talon's mind raced with questions. Would her team be trusted? Would they remember what they once were, or had time softened their edges? The human ships slipped silently through the void toward the war-torn systems where alien armies clashed with devastating weapons. The humans' arrival changed the battlefield immediately. Where others saw death and despair, the team saw opportunity, moving like shadows to strike with precise and deadly force. Enemy commanders scrambled to adapt, but the humans' tactics were unlike anything they had ever faced. Captain Talon coordinated her squad with calm authority, calling on strategies buried deep in their collective memory. Ambushes, feints, and psychological maneuvers designed to unnerve and confuse. The war was a brutal dance, and the humans led it with ruthless grace. But as the battles raged, whispers grew among the Allied leaders. Stories of the old days resurfaced, tales of how humans had once turned entire worlds into wastelands. Not out of cruelty, but out of a cold, unyielding efficiency. Some feared that history might repeat itself, that the ban was forgotten for too good a reason. Talon felt this unease too. Her soldiers were not mindless killers. They were survivors who had learned hard lessons. But the line between necessary force and brutal recklessness was thinner than anyone admitted. With each mission, memories stirred, of friends lost, of choices made under fire, of the weight of survival at any cost. Yet the enemy was relentless, advancing with new weapons and strange tactics that threatened to overwhelm the Allied forces. Without the humans, victory seemed impossible. Talon understood the stakes better than anyone. This was more than a battle for territory. It was a test of whether humanity could rise beyond its past or be condemned to it forever. As the team launched their next strike, piercing through enemy defenses with calculated precision, a sudden alarm blared aboard their flagship. An unknown vessel, cloaked and fast, had entered their space, moving toward the front line. Talon's eyes narrowed. Was this a trap? An assassin? Or something worse? The tension tightened like a noose around the fleet as the humans prepared to face whatever came next. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if the forgotten warriors would bring salvation or destruction. The arrival of the human strike team sent shockwaves across the Allied fleets and the war-torn worlds where the fighting was fiercest. News of their ruthless effectiveness spread quickly like wildfire, stirring both hope and fear. The Allied commanders whispered behind closed doors, recalling stories long buried, tales of humans who had once been feared for their cunning, their brutality, and their unwillingness to follow the rules that bound other species. Captain Mira Talon and her team moved through the battlefield with a precision that no one could match. They struck swiftly and vanished before the enemy could react, dismantling entire enemy units with strategies that seemed almost too cruel to be true. Yet there was more to these tactics than mere savagery. The humans had a strange kind of honor, a code written not in words, but in results. Still, the Allied forces struggled to trust them. Among the council members and generals, old fears resurfaced like ghosts. Would humanity's return mean the galaxy would be plunged back into endless war? The war itself was changing. The enemy they faced was unlike anything before. Machines that adapted to attack patterns, warriors that seemed almost immune to fear, and technology that twisted the rules of combat. The humans, however, did not flinch. In quiet moments, Talon and her squad shared stories from a time when humans ruled battlefields with a fierce determination born from hardship and survival. They spoke of the old days when humanity was forced to fight for its very existence, learning to turn every weakness into strength. But those stories also held dark secrets, experiments, betrayals, and sacrifices that had driven the Council to ban them. These were the shadows of the past no one wanted to face again. While humans excelled in battle, their presence created divisions among the Allied ranks. Some species viewed them as necessary evils, others as dangerous liabilities. Talon understood this distrust, but remained focused on the mission. Each victory came at a cost, not only in lives, but in the fragile unity of the Allied forces. The humans' aggressive style clashed with more cautious tactics favored by other species, causing friction that sometimes threatened to unravel alliances. Yet, even the skeptics could not deny the humans' effectiveness. Reports came in of entire enemy battalions collapsing under human assaults that used psychological tricks, decoys, misinformation, and calculated fear that left the enemy commanders second-guessing themselves. It was as if the humans could see the battlefield in a way others could not. One night, as the fleet rested in orbit above a shattered planet, Talon found herself alone, staring at the stars. Memories flooded her mind, visions of past battles, the faces of comrades lost, and the moments when survival demanded choices that haunted her still. She knew that beneath the surface of every mission lay a question. Could humanity control the dark parts of its nature? Or was it destined to repeat its mistakes? Suddenly, the calm was shattered by a transmission from the Allied command. They had intercepted a message from the enemy, a chilling warning in a language no one fully understood, but the meaning was clear. The humans were not just fighting for victory. They were fighting for their place in a galaxy that feared them. As Talon prepared her team for the next mission, she realized that the battle was no longer just about defeating an enemy. It was about confronting the shadows of their own past and proving to the galaxy that humanity had changed, even if history still whispered warnings. The next strike would test everything they believed, and the outcome could decide whether humans were truly ready to return to the battlefield, or if the ghosts of their history would claim them once more. The war had dragged on longer than anyone expected, with no clear sign of victory for the Allied forces. Just as the humans began to gain ground, and the other species started to hope, a new and terrifying reality revealed itself, an enemy unlike any they had faced before. This enemy did not appear on scanners, did not respond to conventional attacks, and seemed to vanish at will, leaving devastation in its wake without warning. Ships and entire fleets were disappearing without a trace, their crews lost to an invisible force. The Allied commanders were baffled and desperate, and fear began to grow in every corner of the galaxy. Captain Mira Talon's human strike team, despite their experience and skill, found themselves struggling to understand the enemy's nature. Their sensors, tactics, and weapons, effective against other foes, seemed useless against this shadowy force. As the humans hunted for answers, they uncovered fragments of information that sent chills down their spines. This enemy was not just advanced, it was something new, something terrifyingly clever. Pieces of old human technology, confiscated and hidden centuries ago, had somehow been stolen and used to build the enemy's stealth systems. It was as if the darkness itself had been turned against them, using humanity's own past creations as a weapon. The revelation hit the Allied leaders hard, forcing them to confront a painful truth. The very tools that had once made humans unstoppable were now being used to wipe out entire worlds. The humans themselves felt a mix of anger and guilt. Talon knew that their past mistakes were coming back to haunt them in the worst way possible. Yet she also saw this as a chance to prove that humanity could rise above its history and save the galaxy from this new threat. As the humans studied the enemy's movements, they discovered patterns, small, almost invisible clues that hinted at the enemy's weaknesses. It was a game of shadows and light, of patience and cunning. Talon pushed her team harder than ever before, knowing that failure meant extinction for countless innocent lives. But the pressure also exposed cracks within the Allied forces. Distrust of the humans deepened, some blaming them for the creation of this nightmare. Arguments flared over strategies, and alliances strained under the weight of fear and suspicion. In the midst of this chaos, Talon faced her own inner battle. Memories of her team's darkest moments, when they crossed lines to survive, haunted her. She feared that using similar ruthless tactics might save lives now, but at what cost to their souls? The enemy's attacks grew more frequent and devastating, striking at key supply lines and communication hubs. Entire planets were left in ruin, their populations fleeing or perishing. The Allied forces scrambled to respond, but the unseen enemy seemed always one step ahead, slipping through defenses as if it had eyes everywhere. Then, in a desperate move, Talon led a daring raid deep into enemy-controlled space, hoping to capture a piece of technology that could turn the tide. The mission was a gamble, filled with unknown dangers, but success meant the chance to end the terror. As her team approached the target, they encountered traps and ambushes unlike anything before, clever, silent killers waiting in the shadows. The tension was unbearable. Every moment could be the last, yet the humans moved with precision, their training and instincts guiding them through the deadly maze. Finally, they seized the device, a small, glowing core that pulsed with eerie energy. Back on their ship, scientists scrambled to analyze it, revealing secrets about the enemy's power source and control systems. The humans realized that this core was the key to disabling the enemy's stealth technology and turning them vulnerable. But the revelation came with a warning. The enemy's control was spread across many such cores, hidden deep in dangerous territory. Destroying them all would be a long, perilous campaign. Talon understood that the war was far from over, but hope flickered brighter than before. The humans had faced shadows before and survived. Now they would lead the charge unto the unseen enemy, not just to save the galaxy, but to prove that the darkness of their past could become a beacon of light. The battle ahead was uncertain, the risks enormous, but the return of humanity to the battlefield had given the Allied forces a fighting chance, one that might finally turn the tide in a war where the greatest enemy was not just what was seen, but what lurked in the shadows. The successful capture of the mysterious core had brought a new spark of hope to the Allied forces, but the war was far from over. Captain Mira Talon and her human strike team faced the daunting task of finding and destroying the remaining cores scattered across hostile territory, each guarded by fierce enemies and deadly traps. Every mission tested their limits and forced them to break through not only physical barriers, but the chains of fear and mistrust that still bound them. Despite their past, or perhaps because of it, the humans had learned to adapt, to think beyond conventional strategies, and to embrace innovation while holding fast to their relentless will to survive. Talon's team moved like ghosts, slipping through enemy lines with precision, disabling defenses and striking hard where it hurt most. Their success began to change the minds of their allies. Where once there had been doubt and resentment, a cautious respect grew. The humans were no longer just feared warriors, they were the key to survival. But this shift came slowly and unevenly. Old grudges and memories of past human brutality haunted many of the other species. In tense meetings and strategy sessions, arguments flared over how much power to give the humans and whether their methods could ever be trusted. Talon felt the weight of these doubts, but refused to let them weaken her team's resolve. Each victory was a step toward breaking the chains of their past, and proving that humanity was more than its darkest chapters. The war itself grew more intense. The enemy, sensing the humans' increasing threat, unleashed brutal counterattacks, designed to crush the strike team and reclaim lost ground. Ambushes, traps, and electronic warfare became daily dangers. But the humans fought back with a mix of old-school grit and new tactics, blending stealth, speed, and overwhelming force in ways that kept the enemy off balance. Talon pushed her squad harder than ever, knowing that failure would mean the end, not only of their mission, but of humanity's chance to return to the galactic stage with honor. Yet, even in the heat of battle, moments of doubt crept in. Talon wrestled with the question of whether the cost of victory was too high. Some of their tactics bordered on ruthless, and she feared losing the very humanity they sought to prove had changed. The team had begun to blur the line between necessary violence and cold calculation, and Talon knew they needed to remember why they fought. To protect, not just to destroy. One critical mission took them to the heart of enemy space, where the largest core was hidden within a fortress planet. The fortress was a maze of defenses and traps designed to break even the strongest armies. Talon and her team planned every move carefully, knowing that this mission could decide the fate of the war. They infiltrated the fortress under cover of darkness, moving silently through tunnels and chambers filled with dangers at every turn. The tension was unbearable. A single mistake could mean capture or death. As they reached the core chamber, alarms suddenly blared. The enemy had discovered their presence. The battle turned fierce and chaotic, but the humans fought with a fierce determination born of desperation and hope. Talon's leadership was crucial, directing her team to hold their ground while specialists worked to disable the core. Explosions rocked the fortress as reinforcements poured in. The squad was pushed to their limits, but their training and trust in each other saw them through. The core was destroyed in a blinding flash, and the fortress began to collapse. The team raced to escape. As the planet's surface shattered around them, back on their ship, battered but alive, Talon saw the relief and pride in her soldiers' eyes. They had done the impossible. The destruction of the core crippled the enemy's stealth capabilities, turning the tide of battle across the galaxy. Allied fleets could now detect and fight the enemy with greater success. The victory was a turning point, a moment when the humans finally began to break free from the chains of their past. They were no longer the feared outcasts, but leaders in the fight for survival. Yet even as celebrations began, Talon knew the war was not over. The enemy was still dangerous, and many cores remained. More battles awaited, and the price of freedom was still high, but something fundamental had changed. The galaxy had started to see humanity in a new light. The humans had proven they could change, grow, and lead without losing themselves. Talon's team became symbols of hope and resilience, showing that even those once cast out could rise to greatness. As they prepared for the next mission, Talon allowed herself a brief moment of quiet pride, knowing that breaking the chains was not just about defeating an enemy, it was about reclaiming a future. The future was uncertain, filled with danger and sacrifice, but it was theirs to fight for. The war had revealed much about the darkness of humanity's past, but it also illuminated the strength and courage that could shape what came next. In the vast, starry silence of space, the forgotten warriors were no longer forgotten. They had returned, not just to fight, but to lead, to inspire, and to change the fate of the galaxy forever. Victory was within reach, yet its taste was bitter, and the cost far heavier than anyone expected. Captain Mira Talon's human strike team had shattered the enemy's stealth defenses, forcing the shadowy force into open battle for the first time. The Allied fleets launched a massive offensive, pushing the enemy back from key systems and reclaiming planets lost in darkness. But the triumph was hard-won, and the scars ran deep. The battlefields were littered with wreckage and the silent graves of those who had fought bravely, regardless of species. Talon saw the weight of victory in the faces of her soldiers, exhaustion mixed with a fierce pride, but also questions and doubts that no medal could erase. The humans' brutal efficiency had saved countless lives, but their tactics sometimes crossed lines that others found hard to accept. Some Allied commanders whispered that the humans fought like predators, leaving enemies broken and hopeless rather than simply defeated. These words stung, but Talon knew the truth was more complex. The war demanded sacrifice, and every choice carried a price. In quiet moments, she struggled with her own conscience, wondering if the darkness they had fought so hard to escape still lived within them. The team had become stronger, but at times it felt like their humanity was slipping away. Relationships within the squad grew strained as some members pushed for ever more ruthless tactics, while others pleaded for mercy and restraint. These tensions threatened to tear the team apart, even as they faced the enemy's desperate counterattacks. The galaxy watched as humans, once banned and feared, stood at the forefront of the battle for survival. Some species cheered their bravery, while others watched warily, unsure if they could ever fully trust a people with such a violent past. Talon knew that winning the war was only part of the challenge. The true victory would be in healing the wounds left by centuries of fear and hatred. As the Allied forces advanced, the enemy grew more dangerous, launching attacks designed to sow fear and confusion. Talon's team faced ambushes, traps, and betrayals that tested their loyalty and resolve. During one critical mission, the humans discovered a horrifying secret. The enemy had been using captured prisoners for cruel experiments, twisting life itself to create weapons of unimaginable power. The knowledge shook the Allies to their core and hardened their resolve to end the war quickly. But it also deepened the moral lines they had to walk. How far could they go before becoming the very thing they fought against? The battle reached a climax on a shattered moon orbiting a dying star. Talon's squad was tasked with disabling the enemy's command center, a mission fraught with danger and uncertainty. The team infiltrated the fortress under heavy fire, navigating a maze of traps and defenses. The tension was relentless. Every corner could hide death. Every sound could mean an ambush. Talon felt the weight of her decisions more than ever, knowing that one mistake could doom not only her team, but entire worlds relying on their success. In the heat of the battle, a brutal choice had to be made. The team faced a situation where retreat meant certain destruction for innocent civilians nearby, but pressing forward risked sacrificing some of their own to save many more. Talon chose the hard path, ordering her soldiers to hold the line and protect the innocent at any cost. The fight was fierce and costly. Some teammates fell, and Talon felt their loss like a physical blow. Yet the mission succeeded. The enemy's command center was destroyed, crippling their ability to coordinate and turning the tide decisively in the Allies' favor. In the aftermath, celebrations were tempered by mourning. The cost of victory was clear, and the galaxy understood that peace would come only through sacrifice and hard choices. Talon faced her team and the allies, speaking not just of victory, but of responsibility. Responsibility to remember the past, to honor the fallen, and to ensure that the future would be different. The humans had proven their worth, but at the cost of their innocence and the trust of many. The Council would soon meet to decide what came next for humanity's place among the stars. For Talon, the war was a lesson in the true meaning of strength. Not just the power to destroy, but the courage to choose compassion over cruelty, even when the cost was high. The shadows of the past still lingered, but within the broken lines of battle, a new hope began to grow. A hope that the true cost of victory could lead to lasting peace, and that humanity's future would be shaped not by fear, but by the strength to change. The war had finally come to a close, but the victory felt far from complete. Captain Mira Talon stood on the bridge of the flagship, gazing out at the stars that stretched endlessly ahead, feeling the heavy silence that followed a storm. The enemy was defeated, their forces scattered and broken, but the scars left behind ran deep across the galaxy and within every soul who had fought. The Allied Council gathered to decide humanity's fate, torn between fear of the past and hope for the future. For centuries, humans had been banned from battlefields for the ruthless wars they waged long ago, wars that had nearly shattered entire civilizations. Now, after proving themselves as saviors and leaders, the question hung in the air. Had humanity truly changed, or was the darkness still lurking beneath their skin? Talon knew the answer could not be found in words alone. It was written in the sacrifices made, the lives lost, and the courage shown when the future seemed impossible. As she looked over her weary but determined team,